Next on Current News, Puerto Rico is in a state of emergency at this hour. A new storm is heading their way as the U.S. territory still recovers from Hurricane Maria. The measles outbreak in New York City is topping more than 600 cases. We'll have the latest on a new vaccination ruling as kids get ready to go back to school. New York City police officers are reportedly making fewer arrests in the week since the firing of ex-cop Daniel Pantaleo. Plus, the Amazon fires are raging while Brazil's president flip-flops on accepting aid to help fight the blazes. The news starts right now. Good evening, I'm Emily Druby. Puerto Rico is bracing for a new hurricane tonight as a tropical storm churning in the Atlantic grows stronger. Residents of the U.S. territory are scrambling to stock up on supplies. Reed Binion reports that they are concerned.
We are worried even with the rain, just in a normal day. So
residents in Puerto Rico bracing for impact as Tropical Storm Dorian churns closer and closer by the hour.
When a storm comes, we are much worried about what is going to become after.
The system intensified as it raged across the Atlantic Monday, poised to slam the Caribbean. Puerto Rico's governor declaring a state of emergency and trying to reassure residents. This as many are still reeling from Hurricane Maria's devastation in 2017.
The whole island has been traumatized, so you have to take that into consideration.
Thousands were killed and power was knocked out for nearly the entire territory. In Barbados, anxiety over the storm had motorists lined up bumper to bumper to fill up on gas. And in Florida, FEMA activated two Miami-based federal task forces, one headed to Puerto Rico and another to St. Croix.
We prepare, we train year-round, and our guys are elite. They're the best of the best. The 28 teams around the country are the elite. They are trained to the technician level across the board and where their expertise might be.
I'm Reed Binion reporting.
Hurricane Maria was the strongest storm to hit Puerto Rico in almost a century. In its wake, a government study found that nearly 3,000 people died as a result. Millions of Americans living in the U.S. territory were without power, water, or shelter for many months. Caring Catholics from the Brooklyn diocese made their way to Puerto Rico to help residents recover, but rebuilding the island has been slow and painful. Congress allocated roughly $43 billion in relief, but as of May, less than half of the money had been received in Puerto Rico. Criticism of how the funds were spent was part of protests that led to the resignation of Puerto Rico's governor, Ricardo Rosselló, last month. When Hurricane Irma slammed the U.S. in 2017, a dozen nursing home patients died when their southern Florida facility lost power. Tonight, former staffers at the home are facing criminal charges. Kristen Holmes reports the latest.
These individuals took an oath to provide care and safety for these individuals in their facility. They betrayed that oath.
4 former nursing home workers facing charges nearly 2 years after 12 residents under their care died in the days following Hurricane Irma. The elderly patients exposed to extreme heat for 3 days after the storm knocked out the power of the Hollywood, Florida home.
These are trained professionals that should have been aware of the environmental hazards that were taking place in that facility, and they chose to ignore them.
The charges range from aggravated manslaughter to tampering with evidence. Authorities say more arrests are expected. Families of the victims say they're relieved to see justice.
This was 100% avoidable. All they needed to do was just call 911.
But lawyers for the accused workers deny any wrongdoing.
These people were calling the Emergency Operations Center, EOC. They were calling for emergency help. They were promised they were going to get help, and they were abandoned.
They showed up to work, they left their families, and they walked into a danger zone. Even leaving their house was danger, from the floods, from the trees in the road, from things falling.
Following the deaths, then Governor Rick Scott set new emergency requirements for the state's nursing homes. Kristen Holmes, Currents News.
Breaking news tonight from Missouri. A federal judge won't let the state's ban on abortions go into effect tomorrow as scheduled. Planned Parenthood argued in court that the law should be put on hold while they challenged the measure as unconstitutional. U.S. District Judge Howard Sachs issued an order late today that temporarily blocks the law. The legislation prohibits most abortions at or after 8 weeks of pregnancy. Attorneys for the state can appeal the judge's decision. An update tonight on the Tree of Life Synagogue massacre. The Justice Department seeking the death penalty for the man accused of the killings. 11 people died last October in the attack against the suburban Pittsburgh house of worship. Michael Bowers is facing more than 50 criminal charges in connection with the shootings. He's pleaded not guilty. Now the Justice Department is seeking the ultimate penalty because they say Bowers expressed hatred and contempt towards members of the Jewish faith, and that played a role in the murders. In New York City this afternoon, several alleged victims of Jeffrey Epstein are asking prosecutors not to stop their investigation. 5 of them arrived at court. A judge heard their testimony, saying it was the court's responsibility to ensure the victims are treated fairly and with dignity. Jennifer Rose said that not being able to see Epstein in court, quote, eats away at my soul.
I just wanted to thank everybody for their constant support during this really difficult time. It was so powerful in there, hearing all the other victims.
Dozens of women accuse the financier who hanged himself in jail of sexual abuse and sex trafficking. The judge said he hasn't decided yet whether or not to dismiss the criminal charges involving Epstein. Arrests by New York City cops are reportedly down a lot in the week after the firing of ex-cop Daniel Pantaleo. New stats published in the New York Post show the weekly decline in comparison with the same period in 2018. After Pantaleo was dismissed from the force over his role in the Eric Garner case, union leaders warned cops to be cautious when answering calls. The new data shows a 27% drop in arrests and a 29% drop in issuing criminal summonses. New York's law that eliminates the religious exemption to vaccinations for school kids is being upheld in court. The decision comes as school is about to start a new year, and New York continues to top the nation in the number of measles cases. Currents News' Tim Harfman reports.
A warning for parents and children as they head back to school. New York is still at the forefront of the measles outbreak. Of the 1,200 confirmed cases across the U.S. in 2019, more than 75% are linked to New York State, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. In the 5 boroughs alone, there have been 654 confirmed cases since September 2018, according to the city's health department. Opposition to the vaccination of kids has played a key role in the outbreak.
The anti-vaccine movement in general has this just belief that by giving the vaccine, I'm going to endanger my own child. And that becomes a very hard thing to try to fight.
Doctors like Joseph Kaplovich are up for the fight. A pediatrics specialist at NYU Langone, he's urging people to get the vaccine and watch out for symptoms.
Starts off as fever, usually it's high fever, you're talking about like 104, 105, cough, congestion, runny nose, red eyes, they get what's called conjunctivitis, and it comes with a head-to-toe rash.
While many cases are connected to the Jewish community, now all students throughout the state must get vaccinated. The New York Supreme Court recently upheld a new law eliminating any religious exemptions from required vaccinations. This Brooklyn father believes children should be vaccinated.
You have to obey the doctors. If the doctors say you gotta get vaccinated, then you have to take the vaccine.
If the city's health department identifies any child without the necessary vaccinations, there could be a $1,000 fine. Tim Harfman, Currents News.
An update tonight on the opioid crisis and what drug makers are expected to do after the $500 million judgment against Johnson & Johnson. The corporate giant is vowing to appeal the Oklahoma verdict. Legal experts are saying that the ruling could help shape negotiations over the roughly 2,000 similar lawsuits filed around the country. Mandy Gaither reports.
The case spanned 2 years. The trial took 7 weeks. The result, Johnson & Johnson ordered to pay $572 million for its role in Oklahoma's opioid crisis. In his decision, Cleveland County District Judge Thad Balkman cited what he called the drug giant's false and misleading marketing of opioids. Oklahoma Attorney General Mike Hunter called Johnson & Johnson the kingpin behind the nation's opioid crisis. Hunter's team of 13 attorneys described the trial as taking on the lion.
We have proven that Johnson & Johnson built its billion-dollar brand out of greed and on the backs of pain and suffering of innocent people.
Oklahoma is one of dozens of states suing opioid drug makers. This was the first state case to reach trial. Hunter hopes it'll help other states be successful. But an attorney for Johnson & Johnson described the judge's decision as flawed.
Johnson & Johnson did not cause the opioid abuse crisis here in Oklahoma or anywhere in this country.
I'm Mandy Gaither reporting.
Tonight, the White House is asking the Supreme Court to let the administration enforce a limit on migrant asylum claims. A lower court judge had blocked the new rule. Under the Trump plan, asylum seekers would be required to ask for refuge in a country they went through on their way to the U.S. Catholic bishops have criticized the White House measure. Stay right here for a Currents News exclusive as Hong Kong reels. The leader of the city's Catholic Students Federation joins us with news on the latest actions that churches are taking. Catholics in China have a new bishop. We'll tell you why his ordination is a first. And what's ahead in the Amazon? There's new confusion as the fires burn. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. There's controversy and confusion swirling tonight over the Amazon fires. World leaders at the G7 summit pledged millions in aid to help fight the blazes. Camila Bernal is in Brazil, where it's still unclear if the Brazilian president will accept that money.
It's estimated that nearly 20% of the oxygen produced by the Earth's land comes from the Amazon rainforest, currently under threat by ranchers, loggers, miners, and spreading fires. Millions of dollars have been pledged from around the world to help fight these fires, including a $20 million donation pledged at the G7 summit.
Many countries indeed have been affected, so we know how dramatic this is for the countries, but for humanity as a whole.
But Tuesday morning, Brazil announced they would not be accepting the aid, only for President Bolsonaro himself to contradict that hours later, saying he would consider it if French President Macron took back his criticism of him. During a meeting with governors of states being affected by the fires, Bolsonaro said he was grateful for the G7's efforts, but that Macron should think before, quote, messing with us. President Donald Trump, meanwhile, praised his Brazilian counterpart's efforts and repledged the U.S. commitment to help. In Manaus, Brazil, I'm Camila Bernal reporting.
More fallout from that G7 summit. Tonight, Iran's president is saying there won't be any talks between him and President Trump as long as there are sanctions. Hassan Rouhani is backpedaling on the possible negotiations after the surprise intervention by French President Emmanuel Macron, who tried to bring Tehran and Washington together. Rouhani claims any meeting would be a mere photo op as long as the sanctions remain. The latest now on the pro-democracy protest in Hong Kong. The territory's leader, Carrie Lam, saying this morning she's doing her utmost to restore law and order after weekend demonstrations turned violent once again. Since June, millions of people have taken to the city's streets in a growing movement of opposition to the Chinese government. Joining us is Edwin Chow, the acting president of the Hong Kong Federation of Catholic Students. Edwin, thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Edwin, can you give us an update on what's happening in Hong Kong right now, and is Carrie Lam the right person to lead the city?
We have protests every week, and in the weekends we have march in every district. So, and I think from July the protests go more aggressive, and I don't think that Carrie Lam is a good leader of Hong Kong because she's not elected by the people. You know, in Hong Kong we don't really have a real election for the chief executive. She's not chosen by the people. So how can she be the right leader of Hong Kong?
Yeah, now you're calling on Catholics and other Christians to take a larger role in the protest, saying they were on the front lines when the demonstrations first started, but not anymore. What happened?
When the protests go more aggressively, we can't find a role, and I think it's difficult for us to take a more important role, like on the front line and calm everyone down. Actually, some of the priests, some of the Christians, they are also doing this right now, but I think actually we can do more things like this.
What other actions do you think the church should be taking?
Most of the church right now, they are opening their church and letting in the protesters to inside the church and let them rest. And actually, we are organizing some prayer meetings. We have organized some mass, and the church are telling us to pray for Hong Kong. But I think we can keep doing it. We should never stop doing these things. But I think what we can do more is, I think some of the priests, maybe they can stand on the front line. They can tell the protesters to calm down and tell the police calm down. Actually, especially because I don't think that the police will harm the priests. I think they can actually help.
Now, China has mobilized troops on their side of the city's border. Are you concerned that Beijing will crack down on Hong Kong?
I don't think that in the short term the Chinese government will use the military to suppress Hong Kong protests, because it's caused too much damage to Hong Kong and China. Especially, it will damage Hong Kong's economic values if China really used the military to suppress Hong Kong protests. I think Hong Kong will lose its special economic status in the international community, especially the Chinese government, the Chinese businessmen. They're actually using Hong Kong for export, for trades. So I don't think they will not use military force in the short term.
Now, Edwin, the protest started months ago in opposition to a proposed law that would permit the arrest and extradition of dissidents back to China. Really quick, do you think that poses a threat to religious freedom?
Yes, I think actually the extradition bill is a threat to the religious freedom, because I think most of the Christians, they were afraid that if we go back to the mainland China, and if we have connection with the underground church, and we go to spread out our message, maybe when we go back to Hong Kong, the Chinese government, they can arrest us and take us back to Hong Kong. As I remember, there was a case that in 2001, some Hong Kong people, he bring back some Bibles to the mainland China, and he was arrested by the government. Yeah, so actually we are afraid of this.
Edwin Chow, the acting president of the Hong Kong Federation of Catholic Students, thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you.
China has a new bishop tonight. He's Antonio Yao Shun, the first to be ordained since the Vatican struck a deal with Beijing on naming bishops a year ago. The details of the agreement have never been revealed, but Vatican experts say that under it, China has recognized the need for a bishop to be appointed by the Pope. The Holy See approved Bishop Yao 9 years ago. He'll lead a diocese in Mongolia. Back here in the U.S., Catholic college students are tackling the big problem of military veterans and suicide, and they're doing so by covering a lot of miles on foot.
I would say it just pays tribute to everyone that is going through the issues after deployments, after serving in the military.
And doing this raises awareness and lets them know that there is a community out there and there are people that care.
These 4 Catholic school students, Kellen Whitty, Quinn Shanenberger, Carson Sherrick, and Devin Johnson, aren't just talking the talk, they're walking the walk, all 140 miles of it.
140 miles is like almost like an attention grabber. And then when they ask about it, that's when we come in and say, we're actually walking to raise awareness and money for people who are suffering from combat.
All 4 are members of St. Norbert Catholic College's ROTC program. With rucksacks on their back, they spent 6 days trekking from Green Bay to Milwaukee, part of the 4th annual For Them 140-mile ruck march. It was a difficult undertaking.
Your feet and ankles hurt for like a day, maybe a couple hours, but it's not compared to somebody suffering throughout their life. So you just had to remember the bigger deal at hand.
By walking, they raised money and awareness for the 4th HOOAH Wisconsin, an organization that supports deployed and returning military members and their families. The boys say the publicity they saw come from it made the challenge worth it.
We got stopped a ton. People saying like, hey, we saw you on the news, we heard you on the radio. And that really is the point of what we're doing here is to raise awareness and get the cause out.
The guys started their journey outside Brown County Veterans Memorial in Green Bay and wrapped up at Veterans Park in Milwaukee 6 days later. Still to come on Currents News, stories that you won't find anywhere else. An 8-year-old boy named Christian and what he did for a new classmate, it's heartwarming. A state-of-the-art new hire that could revolutionize a place in the Vatican that's more than a century old. And the tablet has a brand new page called Our Diocesan Family, where you can share your pictures of recent baptisms, Holy Communions, confirmations, marriage, all of the joyous sacraments. For more details and to submit your photos, go to thetablet.org/ourdiocesanfamily. Your picture may be published in an upcoming issue of the newspaper. We'll be right back. A friend in need is a friend indeed. The first day of school was scary for an 8-year-old, especially since the student has autism. Then a classmate came in to lend a helping hand. Morgan Mobley reports on the heartwarming story.
I seen him on the ground with Connor as Connor was crying in the corner, and he was consoling him, and he grabbed his hand and walked him to the front door, and we waited until the bell rang and he walked inside the school. And the rest was history. They have an inseparable bond.
What Christian didn't know that day is that Connor is autistic. He was overwhelmed with everything going on around him.
I fear every day that someone's going to laugh at him because he doesn't speak correctly, or laugh at him because he doesn't sit still, or because he, jumps up and down and flaps his hands.
It was a moment in time caught, now capturing the hearts of strangers all over. But to the boys, it was simple.
He was kind to me.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah. I was in first day of school, and I started crying. Then he helped me, and I was happy.
Christian didn't see Connor as different, a message their moms and many others are taking from this.
It doesn't matter, color, it doesn't matter gender, it doesn't matter disability, it doesn't matter anything. Just be kind, open your heart, and that's what we need in this world.
No words spoken, just a quick gesture turned this little boy's whole day around.
One act of kindness, can change someone's life.
Can change the world, that's all it takes.
A life lesson learned from 2 8-year-old boys.
After finding me and holding my hand, I will get happy tears.
They say it's really as simple as this.
Be nice.
That photo capturing the heartwarming moment between the two kids now has over 21,000 shares on Facebook. Finally tonight, the Vatican pharmacy is more than 140 years old, and there's a new hire on the job. It's a state-of-the-art robot that will manage the stockroom and get medications quickly to customers. The pharmacy is said to be the busiest in the world, and the robot is expected to serve some 2,000 people a day. That is Currents News. I'm Emily Druby. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.